Political parties. For most of us, they pretty much are a democracy. They're everywhere, they're loud, and they seem to be running the whole show. But here's the strange thing about them. It feels like we can't live with them. But, as we're about to see, modern democracy can't seem to function without them. All right, let's get into it.
This cartoon, by the legendary R.K. Laxman, it perfectly captures a feeling we've all had, right? You see this empty stage, a whole crowd just waiting, and this question just hanging there. Where have all our leaders gone? It's such a powerful way of showing that feeling that the system is failing us. And more often than not, all that frustration gets aimed at one place: political parties.
And this love-hate relationship, well, that's the paradox we're digging into today. We blame parties for all the fighting, for things getting stuck, for pretty much everything we think is wrong with politics. But is it really that simple?
And look, this isn't just a hunch. The numbers are pretty clear. All over the world, when you ask people which institutions they trust the least, political parties are almost always right there at the bottom. People see them as self-serving, divisive. They've basically become the go-to bad guys for all of our political problems.
So, case closed, right? Parties are unpopular. Maybe we should just move on. Well, hold on. The reality is, it's way more complicated and honestly, a lot more surprising than you might think.
So, check this out. This is where the story gets really interesting. This data from India, for example, shows something kind of wild. Even while everyone was getting more critical of parties, the number of people who said they actually feel close to a political party was going up. It dipped for a bit, but then shot right back up. So, what is going on here? We say we don't trust them, but we're also getting more attached to them?
And that leads us right to our big question. If there's so much distrust, why do these things even exist? More than that, why is almost every political scientist telling us that parties are a necessary condition for democracy? To figure that out, we have to look at what their job is actually supposed to be.
Okay, so to really get to the bottom of this, we need to strip away all the noise and the criticism for a minute. Let's just ask a really basic question. What is a political party for? What are the core jobs they do that make them so important?
Well, the textbook definition is actually pretty simple. It's a group of people who basically agree on how society should be run. They put together some policies and programs, and their whole goal is to win elections so they can put those ideas into practice. It's really about organizing ideas and people to gain power.
And they do that by taking on some huge jobs that, frankly, someone has to do. They're the ones who contest elections and offer us clear policies to choose from. When they win, they're in charge of making laws and actually running the government. If they lose, they have this super important job of being the opposition to keep the winners in check. And every day, they're out there trying to shape public opinion, and this is a big one. They give regular people access to government machinery. Without some organization handling all this, democracy would just be chaos. Think about it this way. On one hand, parties get people fired up, right? They hold these huge rallies, shape what people are talking about, and build support for their ideas. But on the other hand, they're also on the ground, connecting citizens directly to the state, listening to problems. They're the middleman, and without them, that link between the people and the government gets a whole lot weaker.
Okay, so those core jobs are pretty much the same everywhere. But how parties organize themselves, well, that looks completely different depending on where you are in the world. This is what we call a party system, and it usually comes in one of three main flavors.
All right, here's a super quick breakdown. First, you've got one-party systems, like in China, where only one party is even allowed to be in charge. Not really a democratic setup, right? Then you have two-party systems, which you see in places like the US and the UK, where power basically swings back and forth between two major players. And finally, you've got multi-party systems, like in India, where a whole bunch of parties are competing, and they often have to team up in alliances or coalitions to actually govern.
So which one is the best? Well, that's not really the right way to think about it. A country doesn't just pick its party system from a catalog. It develops over time, It's shaped by history, by social divides, by the rules of its elections. For a huge, incredibly diverse country, trying to fit everyone into just two parties would be almost impossible.
Okay, so we've made the case for why parties are so necessary. But let's be real. That doesn't mean they're working perfectly. It's time to get back to that frustration we started with and look at the real, systemic challenges that are causing all the problems, the cracks in the foundation.
Around the world, experts tend to point to four major issues. First, a serious lack of internal democracy, where just a few leaders at the very top call all the shots. Second is dynastic succession, where leadership gets treated like a family business. Third, the growing and corrupting influence of money and muscle power in politics. And finally, a lack of meaningful choice for voters, because parties are starting to look and sound way too similar.
And this problem with money in politics, it's a huge one. This cartoon just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? When winning is the only thing that matters, parties start taking shortcuts. They'll pick candidates not because they're the best person for the job, but because they're rich and can fund their own campaign, or because they can bring in a lot of cash. This gives wealthy people and big companies way too much influence, and that's a serious threat to the whole idea of democracy.
And that fourth problem is just as frustrating for voters. Over the years, those big, fundamental differences between major parties have started to shrink. They often end up agreeing on the major economic policies and just argue about the small stuff. And that can leave you feeling like, hey, what's the point of my vote if nothing's really going to change?
So the challenges are clear, and they are definitely serious. But does that mean the whole system is broken beyond repair? Not necessarily. Let's take a look at some of the ways people are trying to reform political parties and make them better.
A lot of countries have tried legal solutions. For instance, some have laws to stop politicians from switching parties right after they get elected. Others have rules that force candidates to publicly declare their wealth and any criminal cases against them. And there are still more ideas being debated, like setting aside a certain number of spots for women candidates, or having the government fund elections to cut down on corruption.
Now, these kinds of laws can definitely help, but they're not a magic bullet. If you regulate parties too much, it can cause other problems, and parties are always really good at finding loopholes. So the question is, if new rules from the top aren't the whole answer, what's left?
And this is where the power really shifts back to ordinary people. There are two other ways to push for change. The first is public pressure. Through protests, media campaigns, and social movements, people can force parties to clean up their act. If parties think they're going to lose votes, they'll listen. And the second path? It's even more direct. If you want better politics, get involved. Join a political party and try to change it from the inside.
And that brings us to this really powerful final thought. It's so easy to stand on the sidelines and complain about bad politics, but the truth is, the quality of our democracy depends entirely on the quality of our participation. The solution to the problems in politics isn't to give up on it, it's to engage with it more and to do it better. That's the real challenge and the real opportunity for all of us.